All right, thank you. Okay, so today, everyone, we are talking about different map applications that you can use on your phone or on the computer. So we'll just kind of talk about what's good about these different apps, why you might want to use them, because there is more out there than just Google Maps. All right, so I'll get us started. Okay, so our objectives for today, as I was saying, is just kind of introduce you to some of the best mapping apps that are out there, kind of distinguish which ones are ideal for which situations, because it does vary. You might want to use multiple apps depending on your purposes. And then also just talking about some of the settings that you might want to be aware of when you're using those apps. So you probably all are familiar with some app or another for mapping, such as Google Maps is probably the most popular one, but there are actually a lot of other really good ones out there that you might also find really useful. So there are apps that are better suited to helping you navigate through heavy traffic, so during rush hour or something, how to take those alternate routes. There's maps that are more suited for any kind of like urban use or so if you're navigating more in a city versus if you're out in the country. There's also maps that are better suited for pedestrians. So if you're walking or taking your bike rather than using the roads, these apps would be better suited to you. And on top of that, there's also apps specifically for hiking and taking, venture off the beaten path. So we'll go over all of those today. Okay, so we'll get right into it. So the first mapping app we're looking at is Apple Maps. So this is something that's built into any Apple product that you may have, whether that's your iPad, your iPhone, your MacBook computer. So it's not available for other operating systems. So if you're using a Samsung phone, if you're using a Windows operating, well, actually, I guess a Windows operating system might be fine. But if you're using any kind of Mac product, this is kind of exclusive to Mac. It's a pretty decently reliable app for navigating any kind of urban or suburban area, but one thing that you might want to note is that it doesn't have enough data, unlike something like Google Maps, for instance, to help you navigate in more rural areas. As well as that, if there's other kind of more specific things you want, like we were mentioning some of those urban pedestrian kind of maps that are more for walking or for using public transit, you might find Apple Maps is a bit lacking in that respect. So another one that we'll look at is Waze. So you may have heard of this one before. Waze is, sorry, I'm hearing some feedback. I'm just going to, there we go. Thank you. Thank you, Deborah. I think it was on your end. So Waze actually collects real-time data. So real-time data with respect to traffic and with things such as any kind of accidents or police sightings. So users can actually report certain road hazards or if they see a speed trap or something and basically put that on the map. So you'll actually get those alerts when you're traveling using Waze. Another neat thing about Waze is that it can map your route for a future time. So for example, if you want to kind of get an idea for what the best time is to go drive to get groceries, it'll give you an idea for what the traffic typically is around that specified time, which can be really useful when you're kind of planning for the future. It is known for giving some more unusual routes to try and get you there faster. So that's typically because if there's, traffic or something, Waze will try and find a way around that. So you might find that you're kind of taking some strange paths home that you wouldn't normally think to take. And that's just because it's trying to get you there faster. And one thing to keep as well in mind is that Waze is only for driving. So you can't use this if you're looking into public transit, if you're looking at, walking for your route instead. You won't be able to use Waze for those purposes. And by the way, just as a footnote, you can get Waze on your phone, whether it's Apple or whether it's Samsung or whatever else. It is universal in that respect. Okay, the next one we'll look at here is called Citymapper. So Citymapper is more meant for traveling via foot, bike, or any kind of public transit. So this is better for specifically more city use. It's has probably the most reliable, or at least very reliable and up-to-date information on public transit. So it can give you a good idea as to when the next train or bus is coming. And it actually has some really useful feature as well in that it will give you an indication of which subway exit to leave from or what end of the train to get on. So it's very much useful, especially if you're in a new city and you're not really familiar with their transit system. Citymapper could be a really good app for you. And similar to Waze, you can get this on whether it's Mac or sorry, an iPhone or a Samsung phone. So next one we'll look at here is called Here We Go. So this one is really useful if you need offline maps. So say, for example, you don't have a whole lot of data, or you know you're going to be in a position, maybe you're traveling abroad or something, and you're not going to have data on your trip. Here is really useful for that. So you can download maps for offline use. They have over 200 countries that you can download maps for. You can download the entire country map onto your device if you so wish. So again, that's really great for travel. It's probably the best app for offline use in terms of map applications. It also does, again, since this is more geared toward traveling, it has these multi-layer floor layouts that show you kind of how to get around in different airports and large shopping centers. Again, can be really useful if you're not familiar with the area. And it's quite ideal for city use. So it does give you an indication of different sort of public transit and navigation tools for when you're traveling around the city. Next, we have All Trails. So as kind of indicated in the name, this is for navigating trails. So when you're taking any kind of hike or walk. So you can search for any kind of like activity or views that you're looking for. So for example, if you want to go snowshoeing or something and you want to see what kind of snowshoeing trails are around, All Trails is really good for that. You can even add certain other search features like whether or not a trail has a waterfall or some other kind of piece of scenery there that you're looking for. It gives you up-to-date trail conditions as well. So it'll tell you what the weather is. Usually like other users can kind of add input as well if maybe the trail is flooded or it's muddy or something. And as well, it does tell you whether or not trails are closed. So say certain points of the season, maybe a trail is not open. Sorry, I got distracted by the chat there. All right. So you can also search hikes by their difficulty. So some hikes will be rated as more difficult than others. Say there's a lot of inclines or, you know, it's just a more difficult hike to take. It will indicate that on All Trails. And then lastly, you can also record your hike. So if you want to kind of remember what path you took or, you know, just get an idea of what trail you ended up taking, you can do that using All Trails. All right, and then finally, as I was saying before, I'm sure most, if not all of you are familiar with Google Maps. This is probably, you know, one of the most up-to-date in terms of just like the different roads and whatnot. So Google Maps connects with your Google account. So you can do things like saving your favorite locations so that you remember them and can revisit them. It'll also remember when you visited a certain location, and it'll tell you like, oh, you went to that restaurant 6 months ago or something. It has a very reliable mapping service. It's updated very, very frequently. So they have, out of probably all the maps that we've looked at here, probably the most up-to-date maps. It is reliable for urban and for rural use. It's also good for driving, for walking, biking, public transit. So it's kind of a little more multi-purpose in that respect. And you can even search for flights using Google Maps. So that's something to keep in mind as well. And additionally, you can download maps on Google Maps for offline use, but it's more for smaller regions, unlike what we were talking about earlier with, sorry, what was it called again? With Here We Go, right? Unlike with Here We Go, where you can download an entire country's map, Google Maps is more for a smaller region. So that's something to keep in mind. So that was just kind of an overview of some of these other useful mapping apps that you guys should be aware of. We're gonna talk now about kind of going beyond sort of basic mapping and some of the additional features built into certain applications. We're gonna we're gonna look specifically at Google Maps. Again, that being kind of the most popularly used mapping app out there. So we'll take a look at some of the additional features that, that Google Maps has. So as I was mentioning earlier, you can download maps for offline use through Google Maps. So we got some screenshots here for you guys to look at. So if you're on your phone and say you want to download a map of Paris, so you can type in the city that you're looking at And if you go down, scroll down a little bit, you'll see that there's this download button below directions on the right there. So if you click that, it will download that map so that when you want to look at it later and you say don't have any data or you don't have Wi-Fi, you can still navigate using that map. Now just keep in mind it's not going to give you up-to-date traffic information, of course, because you're not on the internet at that point, but you will still have the most up-to-date in terms of the roads and whatnot. I also had mentioned that you can save locations using Google Maps. So to save a location, so say you want to remember a friend's address or something, what you can do is click on that little, so see these little stars here are places that somebody has saved to their favorites, for example. But if you wanted to add a location, you can basically click on the little sort of pin, that red pin there that the arrow's not pointing to, so that big pin. And if you click on that, you can go down, so in this middle screenshot here, right to the right of directions, there's that button that says save. So if you click that, it'll take you to this next screen that we see on the far right. And you have the option to add something to your favorites. So if you click that little checkbox to the right of favorites there, it'll add that location to your favorites. You can also do things like star places or indicate them as a place you want to go. That's just some additional options you have there. But nonetheless, it'll save that location on the map for you and you can refer back to it later. So just as like a little point, the way I use this is normally to remember where friends live. So I'll mark their spots, their houses as favorite locations, so I don't have to ask them every time what their address is. I find that very useful. It's kind of like almost like a contacts or a phone book, but for addresses. So you can also map multiple locations at once through Google Maps. So say, for example, you wanted to go to the grocery store, but you want to stop for gas along the way. You can add these stops to your route, and that way it'll navigate you to that stop and then to your final location, which can be really good for getting a better route. So the way you do that, so when you have the location that you want to go to, so right now we have your location and then navigating to Penn Station. If I want to add a stop to that, what you can do is basically, so if you scroll down there, there's that option to add a stop. So if you click on add a stop, what it'll do is it'll add, basically it's now assigned Penn Station. If you look on that right there in that red box, it's assigned Penn Station as being point A. And then that stop that I've added is point B. So basically what I'm saying is I want to go to Penn Station, but I want to stop here as well. So you can plug those multiple locations into your route and Google Maps will navigate you there accordingly. This can be really, really useful. Like I said, if you want to go somewhere, you have like a final destination in mind, but you do want to stop somewhere along the way. Before, what I used to do is just put in that stop, like locate myself to that stop first and then put my final destination in. But sometimes it's easier to kind of map that out as part of your route and you get a more I guess streamlined route to your final destination with that stop there. So this can be very, very useful. So something to keep in mind as well when you're using Google Maps is if you're just looking for, say, a restaurant, maybe you just want to find a Chinese restaurant or you want to stop at a cafe or something, you don't need to necessarily know which specific cafe or which specific restaurant. What you can just do in the app itself is just type in a broad search term. So here in this example, we've just typed in cafe. And what that will do is then show you on the map all the different places that Google has determined kind of match your search criteria. So all those little red points on the map with the little coffee cup in them, those are all different cafes that it's determined exist in your sort of search area. So that can be really good, especially if you're trying to find, okay, which cafe is closest. Maybe you know Tim Hortons is one type of cafe, but you didn't realize that there was a Dunkin' Donuts right near you. So it can be really useful in that respect and in finding new restaurants and places to explore. Another thing that is useful with maps is you can also plan a route for later. So you don't necessarily have to navigate there right now. You just want to plan your route out and save that for a trip you're taking later on. So all you do is basically, this can also be good. Sorry, one thing I would like to add, can also be good for determining when the best time to go to something is. So I've used this before when I've been trying to figure out what's the best time to drive downtown so that I can avoid traffic. Because when you type in your location and then sort of your final destination, you can actually adjust what time you would like to leave at. So you can say your departure time and your arrival time, and it'll kind of give you an indication as to when the best time with leave is. So right here, I don't think this has, okay, there aren't those full screenshots in this presentation here, but there is an option to actually, there should be like a drop down that allows you to specify what time you want to depart. And what I'll sometimes do that for, like I was saying, I will check basically what the estimated length of time it's saying my route is going to take. So if I kind of play around with the numbers a little bit, I can kind of get an idea, okay, well, maybe I don't want to leave at 6 because it's going to take me 40 minutes to get downtown. If I wait until 7, it's only going to take me 20 minutes to get downtown. So it can be really good for planning those later routes using their traffic estimates, and also just so that you get an idea for, you know, if you're planning a picnic or something and you want to know how long it's going to take you to get there later on in the day, that can be really useful as well. So something I think probably most of you are aware of if you're familiar with using maps is that it does show you the traffic. So if you ever look at a route, you'll notice that there's different colors on the roads to indicate sort of the different traffic densities at that time. So blue basically means, blue or green means that it's open, everything's good, there aren't any expected slowdowns. Yellow means, or orange means that there is some slowdown. And red can basically indicate very, very heavy traffic to the point of gridlock. You might notice as well, if you're ever using Google Maps when you're actually driving, that if anything changes, so if there's a new unexpected slowdown and you have like the voice navigation on, it'll say something like, oh, we've noticed a slowdown coming up on your route. And it'll usually give you a verbal indication as to how long that slowdown is. The only thing is, and as mentioned in the chat, actually, Waze is generally better at giving you an indication of traffic than Google Maps. That being said, they're both still going to give you at least some idea if your route is clear or not. I've never had Google tell me, you know, that this route is totally clear and then hit complete gridlock. It's usually at least I'll have an idea of whether or not traffic is bad or not. Another great feature, and I have also made great use of this before, is getting Google Maps to remember where you parked. I'm sure we've all been in that situation before where we have forgotten. It happens. So what you can do, so once you arrive at your destination, if you open Google Maps, there's actually an option, if you kind of scroll down toward the bottom, to set as parking location. So wherever you've parked, you'll have like that little blue dot with the sort of indicating where you are on the map. It'll remember that that's where your car is. Now, it might not be super accurate to the point of like meters or something, but you'll at least get a general idea of what area your car is in. And sometimes I've actually had my maps just know this without me indicating it. So it seems to also, like if you're not sure if it's going to kick in for you, I would definitely just hit the set as parking location button at the bottom there. But I actually have had it just do this automatically before when I've parked in malls and whatnot. It seems to detect that my car is off, that I've stopped moving, and it just kind of remembers that that's my location, because sometimes I'll see it when I open up my map later and it'll be like, your car is right there. So just play around with that, but definitely it has come in use for me before. So I encourage you all to try that feature out. Okay, another thing also really cool and really useful with Google Maps, you can share your location. So say for example, you just want to let your family members know kind of what your ETA is. You're taking a drive out to, I don't know, you're going over to their house or something. So what you can actually do, so if you click on the top right corner there, you'll see if you're logged into your Google account, you'll see an icon for your account there. If you click on that, and you kind of scroll down, it's the third option in this list. You can click on location sharing. And so what that does is you can share this with other people who have Google accounts. So on the right here, you see I've got some a list of some names there. I can send it to those people, to those contacts. And basically they'll be able to see real time you taking your drive. So if they open up that map, they'll see kind of where you are on your route. They'll see what your estimated arrival time is. So that can be really useful, especially if, I don't know, maybe you're taking like a really long route somewhere and you just want them to be able to know in case you get in an accident or there's an unexpected slowdown. I really like using that. I've used that with my friends quite a bit, actually, just to kind of keep each other, um, keep each other safe. So I've really liked using that share your location feature. And actually, I've noticed as well, just another little anecdote, that sometimes if I'm texting someone or I'm messaging them on Skype or something, and I'm saying I'm on my way, sometimes Google will actually just prompt me to, like, it'll highlight that word and it'll prompt me to share my location. So just a note, if you've ever had that come up, that's what this was actually indicating. It was asking you to share your location on your Google Maps drive. Okay, so there are ways also to kind of change your location sharing settings, because while all these apps are really great tools for navigation, they can eat up your data. And some people, don't really feel comfortable with them being able to collect location data whenever they want, kind of thing. So to kind of minimize that, what you can do is go to your settings and change your sharing settings to apply only when you have the app open. So not all the time, but just when you're using Google Maps or Waze or Here or whichever app you're in. So if you're on an iPhone or iPad, what you have to do is go to Settings, and there should be an option in your settings menu called Privacy. If you click that, there should be another submenu that opens up, and there should be an option there that says location settings. So once you've gotten into location settings, you can then clarify for a certain app. So say, for example, we're talking about Waze, you can click on Waze and you can change it so that it only has access to your location when you're using that app. Very similar on Android. So again, you would go into the app itself or into your settings and go down to the option that says location, select the app that you're talking about. So Waze, again, we'll use as an example, and you can set it to only allow to access your location while using that app.